assaulting a child because he felt entitled to do so. Judge Martinez reviewed the evidence carefully before denying the motion to dismiss. There is sufficient evidence to proceed with the hearing, she ruled, causing Harold to lean over and whisper furiously to his attorneys. What followed was a carefully choreographed legal battle. The defense called character witnesses who testified to Harold's charitable works and business acumen. Former employees described his mentorship and leadership. A psychologist suggested Harold might have acted instinctively due to a perceived threat, activating a fight-or-flight response. Mr. Whitfield has no history of violence, Preston emphasized repeatedly. This isolated incident, it occurred as alleged, would be completely out of character. When Michelle, the flight attendant, was called to testify, Harold's attorneys attempted to portray her as unreliable and biased. Isn't it true that you are currently involved in a labor dispute with SkyX Airlines? Preston asked, attempting to undermine her credibility. That has nothing to do with what I witnessed, Michelle replied, her voice steadier than it had been on the airplane. And isn't it also true that you initially reported the incident as a minor disturbance rather than an assault? Preston pressed. Michelle hesitated, then squared her shoulders. I was instructed by my supervisor to minimize the incident in my report. I was told Mr. Whitfield was a high-value passenger whose comfort should be prioritized. This unexpected admission sent murmurs through the courtroom. Judge Martinez called for order before allowing Michelle to continue. I've been a flight attendant for 12 years, Michelle said, her voice gaining strength. I've seen passengers from all walks of life. What Mr. Whitfield did was not a misunderstanding or self-defense. He deliberately struck a child because he was angry and believed he could get away with it. Preston attempted to discredit Michelle by suggesting she was seeking publicity or financial gain, but her testimony remained consistent. When he finished his cross-examination, she addressed the judge directly. Your Honor, I nearly lost my job for speaking up today. But I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent about what happened to that little girl. The defense strategy shifted as the hearing progressed, focusing increasingly on portraying Jackson as a dangerous vigilante with a history of violence. They introduced his military record, emphasizing combat deployments and suggesting he had overreacted due to PTSD. Mr. Miller restrained my client with excessive force, Preston argued. Military conditioning caused him to escalate a minor situation into a physical confrontation. When Jackson took the stand, he presented a striking contrast to the defense's characterization. In a crisp button-down shirt and slacks, he spoke with quiet confidence and precision, answering only what was asked, without volunteering additional information. The discipline of his military training evident in his testimony. Mr. Miller, did you physically restrain Mr. Whitfield on the aircraft? The prosecutor asked. Yes, Jackson replied. Simply, why did you take that action? I observed Mr. Whitfield strike a child with a closed fist with sufficient force to cause immediate bleeding. I assessed him as an active threat to the child and other passengers. Did you use excessive force in restraining him? I used a standard restraint hold designed to immobilize without causing injury. Mr. Whitfield sustained no physical damage from my intervention. Preston's cross-examination attempted to provoke an emotional response, suggesting Jackson had a hero complex or was looking for threats where none existed. Isn't it true that your military experience has conditioned you to see violence as a solution? Preston. My military experience taught me to protect civilians from harm, Jackson replied evenly. It also taught me precise threat assessment and appropriate use of force. So, you appointed yourself judge and jury on that aircraft? Oh, sir. I witnessed a felony assault on a child and acted to prevent further harm, as any responsible citizen should. When Tiana took the stand, she balanced professional composure with maternal emotion. As a surgeon accustomed to high-pressure situations, she recounted the events with clinical precision, but her voice broke when describing Zara's injuries and ongoing nightmares. My daughter asks me every night if the bad man can find us, Tiana testified. She's afraid to fly again. She's afraid of men in suits. The most dramatic moment came when Harold himself took the stand. Initially, he presented as calm and reasonable, expressing regret for a situation that got out of hand. He claimed he had merely raised his hand defensively when Zara had lunged toward him repeatedly. "I would never intentionally harm a child," he stated firmly. "That's not who I am." But as the prosecutor's questioning continued, cracks appeared in his composed facade. When presented with a timeline of events reconstructed from multiple witness statements, Harold became increasingly agitated. "People are lying," he insisted, his voice rising. "They've been manipulated by social media outrage and the prospect of lawsuits against a wealthy target." "Mr. Whitfield," the prosecutor said calmly, "we have 17 witness statements describing you striking Zara Williams with a closed fist. Are you saying all 17 witnesses are lying?" "They're mistaken," Harold snapped. "It was chaotic. People see what they expect to see. We also have video evidence showing the aftermath, including your statement, and I quote, 'The brat deserved it.'" "How do you explain that?" Harold's face flushed with anger. "That footage is taken out of context. This entire proceeding is a farce designed to extort money from a successful businessman." As his composure deteriorated, Harold revealed more of his true nature. He complained about special treatment for certain passengers and made thinly veiled references to people who don't know their place. From the gallery, Jackson observed the shift in the courtroom's atmosphere. Judge Martinez's expression had hardened and several jurors were openly taking notes during Harold's increasingly defensive responses. The final moment of the hearing came when the prosecutor introduced a surprise piece of evidence, a sealed deposition from another of Harold's victims who had broken her NDA to testify about a similar assault 2 years earlier. "Objection!" Preston shouted, rising to his feet. "This is completely inadmissible and prejudicial." While the attorneys argued legal points, Harold's gaze swept the courtroom until he locked eyes with Jackson in the gallery. For a brief moment, the mask of respectability dropped completely, revealing naked hatred and rage. Jackson met his stare evenly, neither challenging nor backing down, simply witnessing. Judge Martinez ruled that portions of the deposition could be considered relevant to establishing pattern of behavior. As the damning testimony was read aloud, Harold leaned forward to whisper something to his attorney. Whatever was said caused Preston to stiffen visibly. Harold abruptly stood, ignoring his attorney's attempt to restrain him. "This is a conspiracy," he announced to the courtroom. "I will not be railroaded by this mob mentality." "Mr. Whitfield, you will be seated or held in contempt," Judge Martinez warned. Instead of complying, Harold's gaze fixed on Tiana. "You think you've won. You have no idea who you're dealing with," he snarled, his refined mask completely abandoned. "I'll make sure you never practice medicine again. I'll take everything you have." This court officers moved to restrain him. Harold lunged toward the plaintiff's table where Tiana sat. His face contorted with rage as he reached toward her, shouting incoherently. Jackson was in motion before the court. Officers could fully react, inserting himself between Harold and Tiana with the swift precision that had kept him alive through combat deployments. He didn't strike or grab Harold, simply positioned his body as a physical barrier, hands raised non-threateningly, but ready to defend if necessary. "Stand down," Jackson said quietly, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to high-stakes confrontations. "You're only making it worse for yourself." Court officers converged, restraining Harold as Judge Martinez banged her gavel repeatedly. "Remove Mr. Whitfield from my courtroom. Immediately. He will be held in contempt." As Harold was escorted out, still shouting threats, the courtroom erupted in chaos. Journalists rushed for the exits to file breaking stories while legal observers murmured among themselves about the unprecedented scene. Judge Martinez called for order. "This court will recess for 1 hour," she announced. "When we reconvene, I will issue my ruling on whether this case will proceed to full trial. In the hallway outside, Tiana found herself surrounded by Jackson's team, their protective formation keeping reporters and curious onlookers at bay. "Are you okay?" Jackson asked, his usual stoic expression softened with genuine concern. "I think so," Tiana replied, her hands still trembling from the confrontation. But his face, he looked like he truly wanted to hurt me. "He did," Jackson confirmed grimly. Men like Whitfield can't handle losing control. When their power is challenged, they often resort to physical intimidation. "Do you think the judge saw what happened?" Tiana asked. Jackson nodded. Everyone saw. Whitfield just confirmed every allegation against him more effectively than any witness testimony could have. When court reconvened, the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. Judge Martinez's expression was severe as she addressed the room. "In my 30 years on the bench, I have rarely witnessed such disturbing behavior from a defendant," she began. "Mr. Whitfield's actions today have given this court significant insight into his character and temperament." She reviewed the evidence methodically before delivering her decision. "Based on the testimony presented and the behavior observed in this courtroom, I find probable cause to bind over all charges against Harold Whitfield for trial. Additionally, I am ordering a psychiatric evaluation and revoking bail based on the demonstrated threat to public safety." Preston attempted to object, but Judge Martinez cut him off. "Counsel, your client's behavior speaks for itself. This court will not be party to intimidation tactics." As the hearing concluded, media representatives swarmed outside the courthouse. The story had transcended a simple assault case to become a symbol of wealth, privilege, and accountability. Tiana faced the cameras briefly, Jackson standing supportively at her side. "Today isn't about victory," she stated. "It's about acknowledging that no one, regardless of wealth or status, has the right to harm a child. My daughter deserves justice, and so do all the others who have been silenced." 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, Tiana stood at a podium in the SkyX Airlines corporate headquarters. Behind her, a banner proclaimed the launch of the Safe Skies Initiative, a comprehensive anti-discrimination training program for all airline staff. Beside her stood Michelle, now promoted to flight attendant supervisor and tasked with implementing the new protocols. No passenger should ever feel unsafe because of their race, gender, age, or appearance. Tiana addressed the assembled media and airline executives, and no employee should ever feel pressured to ignore harassment or assault to protect a company's relationship with high-value customers. The journey to this moment had been arduous. Harold Whitfield's courthouse meltdown had catalyzed a series of revelations and consequences that rippled through multiple institutions. The criminal trial had resulted in his conviction on charges of assault on a minor with additional charges of witness intimidation and perjury. His 18-month sentence was less than many felt he deserved, but the true punishment came in the form of public disgrace and professional ruin. Westridge Financial had distanced itself from its former executive, conducting an internal investigation that uncovered multiple ethics violations. The passenger incident management protocols that had enabled cover-ups were exposed and dismantled. 3 airlines have revised their policies on reporting passenger misconduct. Most significantly, victims of similar incidents had found their voices, breaking through the culture of silence that had protected powerful abusers. For Tiana, the aftermath had brought unexpected developments. After her suspension, colleagues at Grady Memorial had rallied to her defense, forcing the hospital board to reinstate her with a public apology. Her presentation at the San Francisco Medical Conference, delayed but not canceled, had received international attention, securing funding for her pediatric surgical innovation. As she concluded her remarks at the airline event, Tiana introduced her foundation for children affected by trauma. The Zara Williams Foundation will provide therapeutic support and advocacy for young victims of violence and discrimination, she explained. Because healing requires more than just physical recovery. It requires restoring a child's sense of safety and justice in the world. In the audience, Zara sat between Jackson and Rick, applauding her mother's speech. At 8 years old, she still carried the memory of that terrible day on the airplane, but the sharp edges of trauma had begun to soften through therapy, support, and her own remarkable resilience. Art therapy had proven particularly effective. Zara's initial crude drawings of the bad man had evolved over months into more complex expressions of her experience. Her latest piece, prominently displayed at the Foundation's first fundraiser, showed an airplane where diverse passengers stood together against a single angry figure. Even in a child's simple rendering, the message was clear: community standing against hatred. After the formal presentation, Jackson approached Tiana with a rare smile. "You were right to reject the settlement offer," he said. "This impact wouldn't have been possible if you'd signed that NDA. I couldn't have done it without you." Tiana replied briefly, touching his arm, a gesture that had become familiar between them over months of shared purpose. Their relationship had developed gradually, built on mutual respect and the unique bond formed through crisis. Jackson had remained in Denver long after his tactical expertise was needed, finding unexpected purpose in helping establish the Foundation's security protocols and mentorship program for at-risk youth. "Have you given any more thought to my offer?" Tiana asked, referring to the Foundation's proposed Director of Security position, a role Jackson was uniquely qualified to fill. "So, considering it," he replied, though his expression suggested the decision was already made. After 20 years of military service protecting American interests abroad, the prospect of protecting vulnerable children at home held profound appeal. Their conversation was interrupted by Rick calling them over to where Zara was showing something to a small group of children, other young victims of trauma who had been invited to the event. She held Hoppy, her beloved stuffed rabbit, now mended and wearing a tiny medal around its neck. "This is my brave bunny," Zara explained to the children. "He got hurt too, but Mr. Jackson's friend fixed him and made him stronger." Jackson watched as Zara demonstrated how the repaired rabbit now sat upright on its own, a small engineering enhancement Rick had added during the mending process. The children reached out to touch it with expressions of wonder, finding connection through the shared language of recovered treasures. Later that evening, a small celebration took place in Tiana's new Denver apartment. The Foundation team, including Jackson, Devin, Layla, Rick, and Detective Gonzalez, now a board member, gathered to commemorate both the launch and the 1-year anniversary of the flight that had brought them together. "I have something for you, Zara," announced solemnly, presenting Jackson with a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a child's drawing in a simple frame, her original airplane scene, but with an addition: the caped figure she had drawn. To represent Jackson now had a speech bubble containing wobbly letters. "You are safe now." Jackson, a man trained to remain composed in the most harrowing combat situations, found himself momentarily unable to speak. He knelt to Zara's level, meeting her eyes with genuine emotion. "Thank you. This is the best gift I've ever received. Mommy says you helped us because that's what heroes do," Zara said. "I think you were sad too, and helping us made you feel better." The simple insight, a child's perception, cutting through adult complexities, struck Jackson with its accuracy. The military career had left him with unresolved questions about power, protection, and purpose. In standing up for Zara and Tiana, he had found answers he hadn't known he was seeking. As the evening progressed, conversation turned to the broader impacts of their case. Multiple corporations have revised their approaches to handling misconduct allegations. Legislation had been introduced addressing confidentiality agreements in assault cases. A social media movement had emerged around #SpokenNotSilenced, encouraging victims to report incidents despite intimidation. "It's remarkable how much changed because one person refused to be silenced," Detective Gonzalez observed, raising her glass toward Tiana. "Because many people refuse to be silenced," Tiana corrected, acknowledging everyone in the room. "One voice can be dismissed. Many voices become a movement. 1 year after the incident, Zara boarded another airplane, this time bound for a foundation event in Chicago. As she settled into her seat, Jackson noticed her small shoulders tense slightly, a shadow of memory passing across her face. "Remember your power breathing," he reminded her gently, demonstrating the technique Rick had taught her. Zara nodded, taking a deep breath. 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out, she recited, completing the exercise. With each breath, her posture relaxed incrementally. A flight attendant approached, recognizing Tiana from media coverage. "Dr. Williams, we're honored to have you and Zara on board today. Foundation's training program has changed how we approach passenger safety." Tiana smiled, acknowledging the comment with grace that had become her hallmark in public appearances. "Thank you for implementing it. Every small change matters." As the plane taxied for takeoff, Zara looked out the window with the returning wonder of childhood, fear giving way to curiosity and excitement. "Mommy, will we go above the clouds again?" "Yes, baby. We'll go so high you might even see angels," Tiana replied, echoing their exchange from that first fateful flight. Beside them, Jackson observed the moment with quiet satisfaction. In his 20 years as a SEAL, he had measured success in objectives achieved and threats neutralized. Now he measured it differently. In a child's recovered sense of wonder, in systems reformed, injustice served not through violence but through persistence and solidarity. The ultimate measure came later that month when Zara gave a short speech at an elementary school assembly about standing up to bullies. With poise remarkable for an 8-year-old, she concluded with words that encapsulated everything their journey had been about. "Sometimes bad things happen even when you didn't do anything wrong. But you don't have to face the bad things alone. There are always brave people who will stand up for you if you just tell your story. And when brave people stand together, even the scariest bullies can't win." As applause filled the auditorium, Tiana and Jackson exchanged a glance of shared pride. The incident on the airplane had begun with hatred and violence, but its legacy had become something neither could have imagined: a foundation for change, a community of advocates, and perhaps most importantly, a child who had learned that justice, while not guaranteed, was always worth fighting for. What would you have done if you witnessed someone like Harold Whitfield assaulting a child? Would you have stayed silent like most passengers, or would you have taken action like Jackson? Comment below with your thoughts. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who need to hear this message about standing up against discrimination and protecting the vulnerable. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories. Thank you for watching, and remember, moment of courage can change many lives. This powerful story teaches us that standing up against racial discrimination requires both courage and community. When Harold attacked little Zara, most passengers chose silence over action, showing how privilege and power thrive on bystander apathy. Jackson's intervention reminds us that one person's courage can break this cycle, but lasting change demands collective action. True justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoers. It's about transforming broken systems. Tana's refusal to accept hush money meant more victims could find their voices. By rejecting an easy settlement, she chose a harder path that ultimately created protection for countless others. The story also demonstrates how wealth and connections often shield perpetrators from consequences, creating separate justice systems based on status. Harold's immediate bail release, the airline's attempt to buy silence, and the hospital's pressure on Tiana reveal how deeply these protective systems operate. Perhaps most importantly, Zara's journey teaches us that healing from racial trauma requires both acknowledgement of harm and active community support. Her transformation from fearful victim to empowered speaker shows that with proper support, even profound trauma can become a source of strength and positive change.